Hey, this is Brian Crescenti. I'm the news editor of Polygon, and I am joined today by Jack Tretton, the former CEO and president of Sony Computer Entertainment America, and now a consultant and obviously an expert in the industry. How you doing, Jack?
Doing great, Brian. Thanks.
So this has got to be an unusual E3 for you. You've spent how many E3s? Like all of them? Basically?
Virtually all of them since 1995, all PlayStation all the time. So this is the first one as a free agent, and I'm really enjoying myself.
Is this the first time you were able to sort of watch all of the press conferences and see them unfold live?
Absolutely. I mean, I always consider myself a gamer first and an industry executive second. I got attracted to the industry because I was a gamer, and I always had to look at things through an individual company lens, and when I did get to see the press conference, it was after the fact. All the commentary had already been rendered, so it was kind of a jaded look at the press conference. So it was the first time I got to see anybody's live with the exception of Sony, so I really enjoyed that.
Was that, what did you think in general of those press conferences this year?
Extremely well done, a lot of content. I mean, almost an avalanche of content. I found myself taking a lot of notes just to keep track of everything that was going on, but I think there's a lot of great games out there, especially in 2015, but a really nice slate coming for late 2014 as well.
Do you think, you know, people try to turn everything into competition? People seemingly want to always have a winner of E3. Is that the way you view things, especially now that you're not with the company?
Well, I think it's a real competitive industry. If you're a gamer, you're a very competitive person, and the people that work at the different companies are also very competitive. There's big money on the line, and I think you're trying to win the hearts and minds of gamers. So yeah, I think there is. It's sort of like you know, when they have soccer games and they don't keep score, but every kid leaves knowing who won and who lost. So while there may not be an official score, I think people are anxious to see what their grades were, what the reaction were, and you want to perform well against your competition, but more importantly, you want the fans of your platform and of your games to get excited about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think this year we saw Microsoft sort of taking a step back a little bit and reminding people, hey, this is a this is a console made for games. We have tons of games coming. They wanted to reaffirm to people that it wasn't so much just entertainment, because they've done that so much. Sony seemed to come in and kind of go with the shotgun blast of, like, we have all this entertainment, including a lot of good games. And then Nintendo really obviously understands that they need to sort of reignite the interest and the passion in the Wii U, and get all these people to come out and either buy it now or buy it by this Christmas. It was interesting to me because it felt like it was, I felt like they were all really good shows, but all sort of going in different directions on some level. Do you think that's indicative in some way of the industry as a whole?
I think very much a different flavor, but to your point, indicative of the industry as a whole, and I think it's a good thing. Come at it from a number of different directions, depending on what you're trying to get across. I think the thing that Microsoft did well, I think a lot of people said they played it safe. I think they played it smart. I mean, this is a gaming show, and they came out and very calmly just hit you with game after game after game, really, really great content, and I think the message was clear and was really well delivered. I think you have to be careful. You do have all year to communicate to gamers, and while this is the most important moment, you want to make sure that you don't throw the kitchen sink at them. Make sure that they don't miss the highlights, and I thought Microsoft did a really nice job with that, but I thought every press conference was interesting. I mean, Ubisoft is probably the most unique, where they go with a paid host and try to go for the entertainment value a little bit more, but they were all good. I think they all showcased gaming, and from what I read, I think well received by the gamers.
It's interesting you point out Ubisoft, because I remember, and I know it's sort of been cyclical, but there were times when everybody's press conference was like a circus. Like, in particular, Microsoft has sort of done these events where they have performers, or they'll bring out some of the members of the Beatles, and it seems like we're seeing a lot less of that. Do you think that's because we're at the beginning of a new console cycle and there's more to say, or is it just that wasn't something that maybe worked out?
I think, smart companies listen to the reaction from their press conferences. What comes through loud and clear is people don't want circuses. And it used to be, you're trying to entertain the reporters and the audience and hope that they write something well. And I remember that when you did parade out somebody, that there would be people who weren't real gamers that got excited by the entertainment. So you were marketing to people that weren't really gamers. Now the gamers are watching live. While the reports coming from the audience are important, a lot of people are seeing it live first and foremost, and they want to see games. So you're no longer trying to just entertain the people in the audience. You want to speak to gamers. So then, it's just about the games. I think the thing that you have to be careful of there is that you don't get too in love with a demo and spend 30 minutes, pouring through a demo. Make sure people get highlights. Ideally, give them the cred of showing them live gameplay instead of CG and pre-rendered videos. And I think people understand that and try to get live gameplay demos as often as possible. And you run the risk, since that's some pretty unstable code, of things crashing. But I don't really remember a moment during any of the press conferences where there were any major glitches. So everything went according to plan there.
Yeah, it's funny. You're right. I think it was a pretty fault-free E3 in terms of the press conferences. When you talk about focusing on message, I can't help but think of last year, where you just blew it out of the ballpark. I mean, you did such a great job with that presentation, and again, personally, I don't like to declare winners, but I think everybody that year was like, you nailed it. What was that like standing up there?
It was incredible. I mean, as I said, I really love gamers. I love the opportunity to come to these shows. I get to run into a lot more of them than I do, on any given day. And it's great to feel that visceral reaction live and in person. And, it was clear that the message was on point, that the machine had been designed by gamers and for gamers and really had the content they wanted. And the biggest reaction that everybody talks about was basically just reiterating the fact that policies and plans weren't going to be changed, and things that were perceived as anti-gamer was an avenue that we weren't going to be pursuing. But there was clearly some debate as to whether that really needed to be said, and given the reaction, just confirming your plans, because there's always such a rumor mill, was met with an incredible reaction. So it really felt great.
Do you feel like, looking back now at your career at Sony, do you feel like that was a pinnacle moment?
It was definitely a pinnacle moment. I kind of bookend them. I remember just as well that first E3 in 1995 and how good it felt to be removed from the bowels of CES and being relegated to some back tent with leaky roofs. And now we have our own show. We have E3 and kind of the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. But I've really been around long enough to see gaming go from a toy for 12 to 17-year-old boys and a fad that's going to go away, according to the outsiders, to something that's clearly recognized as mainstream entertainment. And you look at this E3 show, you've got almost 50,000 people coming from over 100 different companies physically being here. I mean, this is a big deal.
Real quickly, I don't want to dwell on it, but your departure from Sony coming sort of soon after that moment, how did that come about, and why the timing?
Well, I was at Sony intended to be about 3 years. At least that was my plan when I joined. And I think anybody who's in this industry and thinks more than 3 years out is dreaming, because the thing moves so fast and it's tough to think that far out. But 3 turned into 5, 5 turned into 7. The company was having great success. I was having great success with them. But I took over as CEO in December of 2006, just after the PlayStation 3 launch. And I think you'd have to safely say that was one of the low points for the company, both financially and competitively. And I spent 7 years of my life trying to help the company dig out of that hole and really reposition PlayStation 3, and more importantly, put the company in a position to be successful with PlayStation 4. And I definitely wanted to go out on top. And I really felt by the time we launched PlayStation 4 successfully, I'd kind of done everything I could do for them, and it was a great opportunity for me to do what I originally intended to do and kind of delve into the broader base of gaming, as opposed to strictly dedicated to one console and one company. So the timing seemed good for me, and I tell you, no regrets looking back. It's only been a couple of months, but I'm having more fun the last couple of months than I have had in a long time.
Yeah, and don't forget the PlayStation Portable and the PlayStation Vita. I mean, that must have been exciting to be there when Sony decided to get into handheld and then to sort of reinvent the way they were doing that.
Well, clearly the toughest road. I mean, you have to give Nintendo all the credit in the world for their handheld gaming heritage, and people had made inroads. Sega had had some success in the past, but nobody really made an impact. And I thought PSP did a really nice job introducing a new audience, or a more diverse audience in some ways, to portable gaming. And I think Vita was a really bold undertaking, given where smartphones and tablets were headed. And I think it struggled to find its place, but I think as a companion device to PlayStation 4, it's still got some potential and will ultimately be enjoyed by a lot of people. It's just a question of how many people are going to be able to pony up with an additional $170 to take advantage of it. But it is a great gaming experience, but again, a real challenge in terms of trying to introduce a dedicated portable device into the world that we live in today.
Right. So now that you are outside of Sony and you're sort of walking out and looking at the broader world of gaming, I guess my first question is, what What was that like for you to go from being so focused on not just console gaming, but PlayStation gaming, and to like everything?
Well, I mean, I love console gaming. I think console gaming is here to stay for a long time. I'll always be a big fan of the console, but you do get a little bit of tunnel vision, and you think the world revolves around the console, and if you're really working for one company, your world revolves around that platform. And I was PlayStation, 24/7. The thing that I've really enjoyed, and I've been aware of it, but kind of through peripheral vision, is to be opened up to the entire industry, getting involved in a lot of the technology plays, getting involved in the mobile space, like to get involved in the PC space, but gaming is everywhere, and it's just great to be open to the entire world. And I'm going to try very hard to remain a free agent and try to get involved in as many different areas as possible.
It's interesting. I was at an event last night just talking about the growth and importance, I think, of gaming and how it's changed. You talk about when it was at CES, and it very much was considered, part of that culture, and that it was sort of this subcategory, a toy, basically. But last night I go to this event, and the Lieutenant Governor for California was there.
Right.
And I had a chance to chat with him about gaming. And obviously, someone like that doesn't swing by those events without thinking about it.
Right.
So he understands the importance, if not to the state, to sort of culture in general of gaming. Do you ever stop and think, like, back when you first started, could you have imagined the governor or lieutenant governor of a state coming by to check things out?
I always hoped that would happen, and being involved with the ESA and being the chairman of the board, I thought the industry deserved a lot more attention that it was getting, particularly in California. And I've lived there for the last 18 years, and it was, you'd kind of say, hello, Mr. Politician, do you know how many thousands of people are employed in this state in the gaming industry, and do you know how many billions of dollars are generated, and how many consumers really follow gaming? And through the ESA, I would attend the occasional dinner, luncheon, or breakfast where a politician would show up to maybe pander for some contributions, but they'd say, so you guys are in gaming, right? What's that all about? So I did think it was kind of a watershed moment last night when you've got the lieutenant governor there who's individually recognizing that gaming is important and he needs to be a part of what's going on right in Southern California. So I thought that was really cool to see. But I always longed for that credibility because I was there from the beginning, and I thought gaming would be mainstream entertainment, and it is truly an art form. But it was just so frustrating that there was such a large percentage of the population that never played a game, would never envision playing a game, so they really kind of marginalized it. I still think we have a ways to go, but boy, we've come so far.
Yeah, it's interesting. You look at the things, sort of horrific things that have happened over the last year or two, like Newtown. I think the Supreme Court decision was a very important moment for gaming, but I think a bigger moment, sadly, for gaming was the reaction to Newtown by the NRA, because it essentially forced people to make a decision, and say either it does cause violence or it doesn't, or we need to take this seriously or we don't, in terms of the issues it might have or the impact it might have. And it feels like, at least on the level of politicians, a lot of them backed away from that. Like, okay, that's not the serious issue. We need to look at gun control or mental health or those sort of things. So yeah, it is interesting to see that maturity, because not only is the industry being taken seriously, and now it's great, games are considered art, but you have, again, this sort of drop in the seemingly constant attacks that the industry was going through. Do you feel like that's going to be impactful for the industry?
Yeah, I think it's extremely important and something I dedicated a lot of my time to. And it was very frustrating that people have to find a simple solution to a problem. There has to be a boogeyman out there. And back in the day, it was comic books, or it was rap music, and there had to be something that was influencing people. And clearly, there are a lot of mental health issues out there that need to be addressed. But because gaming is mainstream entertainment, if you look at the facts, you realize that the average gamer is 31 years old, that there are more women playing games than there are 12 to 17-year-old boys. So to think that gaming has something to do with some act of violence and the fact that somebody might have played games influenced them is about as random and relevant as saying, they drove a car or they watched TV. I mean, the chances are, if they're walking the face of the earth, they probably play games. But what that has to do with whatever mental health issue caused somebody to creates some act of violence really is irrelevant in terms of that being a negative influence. At least I firmly believe that, and I think there are plenty of studies that back that up.
It's interesting, you mentioned the increase in women gamers or female gamers. That's obviously become a growing topic among gamers and developers. What's your take on that? Because there is this sort of constant conversation, certainly now, about the use of male or female lead characters and why there's this disproportionate number. Do you feel like that's going to be changing?
I think it has everything to do with any type of growth industry. It starts with a segment, and then it expands from there, and it ultimately reaches out to grab everybody. And I noticed it even at this E3. You have a lot more women on stage, a lot more women involved in development, a lot more female gamers, a lot more female correspondents. It really is mainstream entertainment now, and women are better than half the population out there, and I think there's a lot more content for them. And it used to be back in the day, I think the most sexist thing you could say was, well, that game is designed for women. I mean, what does that mean? And so, you try to create a great game, and if you create a great game, it attracts a very large audience. It's going to attract young and old. It's going to attract male and female. And I think the fact that this is really expanded in terms of the technology and the breadth of content, you're going to attract a wider swath of people. And I think women enjoy playing games as much as guys do. They were just looking for content that appealed to them.
So in general, looking at the landscape, you've obviously spent, at least I know you've spent a lot of your career doing this, but now that you're looking at it from a broader perspective over the last few months, what is it you see happening? What do you think, where do you think the industry's headed?
Well, the thing that's never changed, that will continue to be the constant, is the fact that this is cutting edge technology. Things move faster in the gaming industry than, in my opinion, any other business. And it's always led by forward-thinking technology. And that's where I find myself gravitating towards the evolution in virtual reality, artificial intelligence. I mean, the game just has to get more and more immersive, and it used to be judged by polygons, bits and bytes, and I know I did throw that in there purposely, but it was all about graphics. And now a lot of the experience is something that you don't even perceive by looking at the monitor. It's the depth of the experience and the things that are going on, in the background that are making it a more immersive and more realistic experience. I mean, you used to play a game and it may have taken you 10 times to beat the level, but you knew the monster was going to come out around that corner at that precise moment. Now the game is really thinking and competing with you, and that's going to continue to evolve.
Right. What do you think about, I mean, it's died down a little, but there was a lot of talk last generation about the next generation being the last generation. It was a confusing way to put it. But the idea that consoles as a piece of hardware that sits somewhere in your house going away. Do you think there is going to come a time where that happens?
Well, one of my favorite topics, the console was going away since I joined the industry. So the console's been on its deathbed for 28 years, according to the pundits, and they'll probably be saying it's dead for another 28 years. I think what you've got now in a console is a very easy device to plug and play in your living room, hook up to a big screen TV, and have a great gaming experience. Whether that requires a box to be in your living room or to be somewhere outside the home, that content has to be delivered to you and ultimately into your hands in a controller, although, with the evolution in controlling devices, maybe we're using our hands and feet and our head later on. But I think the experience of sitting in the living room with friends with a controller in your hand is something that'll be best served with the console for the foreseeable future. So I personally don't think it's the last console generation, but it depends on your definition of console. I mean, console used to be a dedicated machine that you played in your house and it stayed in your house. Now you can take your experience with you portably. You can play people all over the world. So, the console has evolved and it'll continue to evolve.
So you're a gamer, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So have you, in the 2 months since sort of 2 months since leaving Sony, have you had a chance to sort of sit down and get to your backlog? Or are there games that you're playing that you weren't playing before?
Yeah, I mean, I used to get at least every game on PlayStation free. So there were more games coming to you between the first and third parties than you could ever spend enough time with. And what I really felt like I had to do, as opposed to going real deep with one game and playing it all the way through, I had to do a lot of sampling and play a little bit of a lot of different games and really never invested time in it. The other thing is, I mean, you got to be aware of your competition, but trying to keep up on all the games coming out with PlayStation, I didn't really have a lot of time to spend physically playing games on other consoles, and I clearly clearly didn't have a lot of time to spend time playing games on other platforms. And I've gone the polar opposite the last couple of months and really haven't spent time not only on PlayStation but on console. I've been spending a lot of time with mobile games.
Really?
And I'm putting in an inordinate amount of time. And the one thing that they haven't gotten me to do yet, and maybe it's because I've gotten games for free for so long, is really spend money. I will patiently play my way through the game, but if you tell me for 99 cents I can complete the level, I'm like, nah, I'll try it again and save my 99 cents. And it's just a matter of principle. And you start to sit there and say, how do these guys make any money if there are so many people out there that aren't spending money on it? You find out there's this incredibly huge universe. There are maybe 7 or 8% of the people that spend a tremendous amount of money on the game and really fund that universe, but everybody's really important to it, and you can get in any way, shape, or form you want to get into. And I find myself, if I'm bored, I just delete it and move on to the next game. The thing that I've always believed that is proving true now is it's unfortunate that there are 24 hours in a day, because there's more gaming than you could play in a lifetime out there if you really want to spend enough time doing it.
Yeah. Have you tried any PC games? Have you been messing around?
No, that's kind of the next thing for me. I want to spend some time. The unfortunate thing about the PC is I need to be in the home, right? I mean, you can play on a smartphone or a tablet from anywhere, and I'm still spending a lot of time traveling and attending meetings. So you got 5 minutes before you go into a meeting, I'll start playing a game. But to really sit at home and be dedicated to a game on the console or the PC has been something that's been difficult for me, and PC is where I'm headed next.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And we'll be here all day. We'll be here for a lot more of the week. So please check out some of our other stuff. Thanks for joining us.